chose trucking over a traditional 9-to-5 job. So for those of you who are new to the channel, I worked for Krispy Kreme prior to getting into trucking for 15 years. When I left Krispy Kreme, I was a sales manager over the route drivers. So at Krispy Kreme, you had a retail side of business, and then you had the transportation side. The transportation side, which was the side I was on from the time I started with Krispy Kreme and for the time I left Krispy Kreme. That consisted of all of the delivery drivers. So when I left, we had about 12 route drivers. I had an off-site facility and my own shop, right? It was totally separate from the retail side. So, and it was nice. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being in management. It was a goal that I had set for myself when I started for Krispy Kreme as a route delivery driver. I said, one day I'm gonna be in management. The first time, I saw the manager there, and every time I would get off from my route as a delivery driver when I would get back to the shop, I seen him in the office, or he would be outside on the cell phone or whatever the case may be, and I felt like, man, he got it made. You know what I mean? So that's what I always aspired to be while I was working for that company. I said, man, I got to get into that seat, right? And it took me a little while. It took me 10 years before I got into management. First as a supervisor, and then the funny part is I got promoted within a year and a half from a route supervisor to a sales manager. So it took me less time to get promoted from supervisor to sales manager than it did from driver to supervisor, which is kind of crazy. But it was a goal that I had set out for myself. I accomplished it. It was something that I was very proud of, and I enjoyed it, man. Being a manager, I was salaried, so I pretty much set my own schedule. I like to come in early and leave early, you know what I mean? So I would, work about 8-9 hours a day. Most days, some days it would turn into 12. Some days I've even worked longer, right? 15-hour days. When you salary, you're not getting paid by the hour, but sometimes things occurred throughout the course of the day. Probably had an issue with an employee or an account or something like that, and I had to stay over later. So those things happen, right? Particularly when you're in management. You just never know, how long your day is going to be until it's over with. I enjoyed the perks of being in management and just the freedom to have my own schedule and to kind of move around how I wanted to move around and still get my job done, right? I didn't have anybody looking over my shoulder. My district manager was in a whole nother state. The only time I would see him in person was when he did his store visits, right? But other than that, we would communicate basically either on the phone or through email or text message. That was pretty much our communication, and conference calls and things like that. But I didn't have anybody looking over me. I was the manager at my shop, and that was one of the great things about it. And so I enjoyed that part of it, and I felt like with my resume, I definitely could have got back into a 9-to-5 position somewhere if I really wanted to. But for me, when I got laid off from that job, it gave me a lot of time to figure out what direction I wanted to go in, what was going to be my next move in terms of my career path. And I always wanted to get my CDL for a very long time. I can remember the first time I really wanted to get my CDL, which was a long time ago. It's probably been over 10 years ago, right? I'll never forget, I was at a Walmart making a delivery, and that was a McLean driver at Walmart, backed up to the dock, and we were both waiting outside of the Walmart door on the receiver side, waiting to get inside of the store to get our product checked in. And I don't know if McLean still has Walmart account. Some of you McLean drivers, y'all let me know in the comments. But he delivered kind of like all the dry goods, I guess, the grocery, right, to the Walmart. And I'll never forget, man, asking him about the job, you know, what it all entailed. And I asked him, you know, how much they were making. He told me 6 figures, right? And at that point, I'm like, yeah, I gotta get my CDL. I didn't get my CDL until years later, but that was always in the back of my mind, talking to him. That's something that I never forget. I'm like, man, I wasn't aware they made that type of money in trucking. I was just totally green, totally naive to the fact that they made that type of money in trucking as a truck driver. So unfortunately, with my work schedule, it just didn't align with trucking school, the schedule they had. Trucking school was from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it was basically, you could say, an all-day thing, Monday through Friday. And so for me, it just wouldn't have worked with my work schedule. And so I just didn't have the time to do it. But when I got laid off, I had all the time in the world. So that was an opportunity for me to go ahead and start trucking school. And that's exactly what I did. 3-week course. It was a pretty good experience. You know, I paid out of pocket. It was one of the best investments that I've made to date. I paid almost $7,000 out of pocket, and I have absolutely no regrets. I've made that money back, I don't know how many times over. The WIOA program was something that I found out after the fact about one of my homeboys. When I say WIOA, it's the acronym WIOA. It's the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And that's pretty much a grant. That's a grant that you don't have to pay back. It's essentially free money that will pay for things like CDL, tuition, plumbing, electrician, different trades like that, and other things. It's just free money that you can use to pay for your tuition. So if you're looking to get into one of those trades, definitely look into the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. All right, see if it's in your state and see if there's funds available. That way you don't have to pay for your tuition out of pocket, or if you're talking about trucking, you don't have to go over the road to get sponsored by a mega carrier and work for them for a year under contract and all that type of stuff like that. You don't have to go that route. There are other ways that you could pay for trucking school. You just got to do your research. Now I'm here, right? And I've been with Gordon Food Service now almost 6 years. And overall, it's been a pretty good experience for me. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not opposed to working a 9-to-5 job. The thing that I like about trucking, and this is why I chose to go this route, is just the freedom and the autonomy that comes with trucking. You're very independent out here. Particularly with my job, is no manager over you, micromanaging or anything like that. Once you're in that truck, that's your office, right? I don't hear from my managers unless there's some type of problem. There are times where I may not even see my manager when I get back to the yard, right? Because I get back pretty early. And then when I go in overnight, I don't see my manager. I like that, man. You know, we're all adults, so we do our jobs and we go home. And at the end of the week, we get paid. I average about 9.5 hours a day. I really can't complain, man. Every driver goes through different things throughout the course of a day with their driving job, whatever job that is. I love the solitude, just being on on the highway or on the road or whatever, listening to my favorite podcasts, listening to my favorite motivational speakers, and really just mentally being in a good space, right? Those are some of the things that really keep me in a positive mindset, really keep me uplifted in terms of my spirit and just the way I think. I turn my truck into a mobile classroom. That's how I look at it. You know, when I'm driving on the road, particularly when I have long commutes in between customers, in between my deliveries, I'm listening to some type of material, some type of content that's gonna add value to me in some way, shape, fashion, or form. But yeah, guys, trucking is just completely different from being inside those four walls at a traditional 9-to-5 job. You just don't have to worry about dealing with managers all down your neck about something, or, you know, coworkers that you may not necessarily get along with, and office politics and all of those sorts of things. Now, that's not to say politics don't come with trucking, because there's some politics in trucking as well, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Again, it's not to say that I won't in the future. You just never know what the future holds. But for right now, I'm comfortable in trucking. I like trucking, and that's just what it is. Y'all let me know, why did you choose trucking over a traditional 9-to-5 job? Or do you plan on going back to a 9-to-5 job if you're currently in trucking? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. Listen, until the next video, I'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Y'all take care. Peace.